Hi, I'm Jesse Leahy with EngagingLeader.com. You may be super smart in your field, but if you come across as stressed out and distracted, you won't receive much support, nor will you have the kind of influence you would like. Instead, you will tend to be viewed as part of the problem rather than part of the solution. So how do you create professional presence, especially in times of stress and change? This model shows three key components of professional presence that can help: altitude, emotional IQ, and the power of three. Let's talk first about altitude, a concept that I learned from Tom Henschel, the executive coach who was featured in episode 11 of the Engaging Leader podcast. When you practice the right altitude, it creates confidence. What do we mean by altitude? If you've ever told someone, before we dive into the details, let's take a look at things from the 50,000-foot level, you were referring to altitude. Altitude is neither right nor wrong, but the key is to pick the altitude that is appropriate for your audience. Most of the time, because we're all experts within our area of specialization, we tend to think all those details are really important. And when we meet with our boss or our boss's boss, we tend to focus on the details that we know so well. But our boss is usually thinking about things at a higher level. You should know what your boss's top three priorities are and keep your conversation focused at that level. When you're speaking with a group of employees or customers, it's tempting to tell them all the details that we think are hugely important. But again, they're probably at a much different level, which may be higher or lower than you. Stop and think about what their top three priorities are and keep things at that level. It will go a long way toward creating confidence in your leadership and where the team is going. Now let's talk about emotional IQ, which creates calm and creativity. You're probably familiar with regular IQ, which is a measure of how mentally smart you are. But according to Daniel Goleman and many researchers, a bigger factor to success is EIQ, sort of like socially smart and not in a popularity contest sort of way. Do you stop and think about how people are feeling? And if people make a mistake, do you beat them up for it, or do you encourage risks and mistakes as long as people learn from them? When you practice EIQ, you free people up to share their honest thoughts and feelings, which is so important for creating world-class results. And you free them up to take risks and be creative. Finally, let's talk about the power of three, which creates clarity. I learned this concept from Fred Garcia, who was featured on our podcast, episode 7. People remember things easier when they're grouped in threes, and they're more emotionally impacted by things that are grouped in threes. Think about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Or blood, sweat, and tears. Jeffrey Immelt, the CEO of GE, said, "Every leader needs to clearly explain the top three things the organization is working on. If you can't, then you're not leading well." Remember, 12 priorities is really no priorities because people can't remember and focus on 12 things. So keep yourself and your team focused on three priorities, and then you'll create clarity around a shared purpose. In times of stress and change, a big way you can keep people engaged is to use your professional presence to create confidence, creativity, and clarity.